This is it. Hole in the Soul. Jose's part of my intro today. We're back, and this is another episode of Hole in the Soul. We talk about things that might be uncomfortable. We talk about things that might help people. Moreover, we talk about things that we've learned have tried to fix this metaphorical hole in our souls. This morning, I was like, what are we going to talk about today? And polarity management is where we're going to go, right?
Yeah, dichotomies.
Yin and yang, fire, dichotomies, fire and water, joy and sadness.
Yeah.
Whew, that's a big one.
It is.
What are we doing recording on Monday morning, man? What are we doing?
We had to reschedule. But it's a good it's a good time to record. I am at my best in the morning.
On Monday mornings, you're at your best?
Not maybe, I don't know.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Nobody's at their best
Nobody's
Monday
at their
morning.
best
I call
Monday mornings.
bullshit. But we're going to give our best to the
gonna-
show. We're going to talk about this stuff.
We're going to do it anyways.
We are doing it.
Yeah.
We are doing it. So, you like polarity management, meaning you're fascinated by it.
Fascinated.
Fascinated. I'm somebody who I think has lived it a lot and didn't think it was that fascinating while I was living it. And then once I started understanding what it is and started reflecting, I'm like, well, it's kind of interesting. But let's just start off with what the hell's polarity management? What are we talking about here? What does that mean?
Okay. Well, what's fascinating to me is the sense making in my world, in my coaching development world. It's called sense making frameworks. So it's frameworks that help you make sense of things that you're going through. And when you can make sense of them, you can respond better, you can manage them better, you can suffer less. I mean, to me, the impact of making sense of something is, you can make better decisions, you can act better, or you can at least stop suffering. So understanding polarities to me is just fascinating, to the point where I have books on polarity management and coaching, and even Jocko Willink's book. Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL who wrote Extreme Ownership, he wrote a book on the dichotomy of leadership. And I think that book speaks into this concept of polarities and how do we manage polarities. If you want, I can jump into what the hell is a polarity.
Hey, Jose, what the hell is a polarity? Why don't you jump in?
So we'll play.
Permission to jump granted. Permission to jump granted.
Well played. So it's two opposing poles, but you can't have one without the other. Yeah, it's like a coin. It's got to have two sides. They got to coexist. And the best example that I've ever, not the best example, but the most easy example to understand this is our breath. We ask, what's more important, inhaling or exhaling? What's more important, inhaling or exhaling? And somebody might say, to inhale or to exhale or both. But even saying both is kind of limiting. So if you get to the more specific, which one is more important, the answer is it depends. And what does it depend on? It depends on where in your breath cycle you currently are at. Like, if I'm at the top of an inhale, what's more important? To start the exhale.
Right.
If I'm at the bottom of the exhale, what's more important? To inhale. So the priority is constantly shifting. And if I lean towards one or the other, if I have a preference towards one or the other, I will start losing balance. I will start suffering. I will start wreaking havoc. I will start not being as effective. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
The other part is that for me to exhale effectively, for me to have an optimal exhale, I have to have an optimal inhale. And this is very important. That means that if I want to attend one polarity well, I have to attend the other polarity well. And then we'll start swapping inhale and exhale for other polarities that we navigate in our life. Right? But we navigate an infinite amount of polarities all day, every day. So we can start asking, instead of what's more important, the inhale or the exhale, what's more important, family or business, family or work? How do you answer that?
Depends on where you are.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, depends on where you, like right now in this very moment while I'm sitting at work. And it's not going to be that it's more important, but it's going to be like what I'm attending to.
Yeah.
It's not my family while I'm at work.
Yeah.
Right.
But you'll have people when we don't have this complexity, not this complexity, this polarity management mindset. Most people will say family. My family is more important. I bet you anything, their behavior will demonstrate something different. Like a lot of people work more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they'll say it. They'll be acting like work is more important. They'll say family is more important, but they're not really like connected to what's truly most important, and it can change. While my kids are at school and I'm at work, work is more important, and I need to get work done. And for me to serve my family well, I need to serve work well. I have to attend this polarity so that I can attend that other polarity well. If I don't do work well, then I show up guilty and ineffective in the other side. Like I fall short in family. But then we can get what's more important, my wife or my kids? It depends.
Depends.
Which has been
context matters.
It does. And which one have you attended most effectively, and which one is needing to be attended to?
Right.
So I'll give you an example. My wife is in New York today. She's in New York right now. She left on Thursday with a friend of hers who's running
bachelor party. Bachelor party.
Running the marathon.
Oh, she is? She's running the...
No, my wife's running the marathon. Her friend is running the marathon. She went with her friend.
That's cool.
Yeah.
She's going to go support her.
Yeah, she went to support her. I've been with my kids, and I've been attending to my kids. So when she comes back, kids have been attended to, I can shift over and attend to my wife and our relationship. So it's an infinite loop in a polarity between the exhale and the inhale is an infinite loop of going back and forth and attending to them. So it's not one or the other, it's one and the other. It's this and that. They're both important, but that's always changing, and I need to discern and be aware so that I can focus on what needs to be focused on. You with me so far?
Yeah, man. No, not only am I with you, I wish we would have had this conversation back when I was experiencing a lot of grief. When my mother passed away. I mean, this is, when you and I met, it was, I don't know, a year or so after she passed. And this whole concept of grief or sadness and joy coexisting was presented to me by my wife. And it's something that they teach you at Grief Share. It's a concept that they teach you at Grief Share, which is a phenomenal, give them a plug, phenomenal, free, I believe, resource for people going through grief. And it's national, and it's like kind of like AA, like they're hosted everywhere. So go check it out.
Yeah.
But if my wife kept saying that to me. She kept saying joy and sadness can and should and do coexist. And if you try to not feel the sadness in the sake of like, hey, kinking the metaphorical hose, you're not going to be able to feel these other emotions as well.
Yeah.
And that concept, when it was presented to me, took a while to really understand. It was actually when you and I started working together, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what my wife's been telling me. I just hadn't really got my arms around it. And now it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly in that state. with pretty much everything, man.
Well,
I mean, it could be the difference. It could be something as small as like, hey, I'm going to read books, and do I want to do so? Like, I deal with this basically nightly. I make a decision. I have a choice. Do I want to read a book on a device, or do I want to read, in some cases, the very same book on paper, like a real book? Because I know that if I read the real book before bedtime, I'm going to have better sleep. I'm going to have deeper sleep. Even if it's my Kindle, I know that still impacts my sleep a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's this little dichotomy each night when I go to read. Do I want to read it here, which is more convenient in bed with the tablet or something, or do I want to read the real book where I have the lights on and stuff? So yeah, man, big and small.
Yeah.
Polarity management.
So the dichotomies, the polarities, they go from, do I serve my wife or my kids, my work or my home, my balance or this or that? And then they can get more nuanced and deeper, or like joy and grief, joy and sadness. For me, when my father died, this lens, seeing this through a dichotomy, struggling with, was my dad a good father or a bad father? Was he good or bad? I was going back and forth between, he sucked as a father, or no, yeah. And then, and then I would lean into and I'd be resentful, and it would brew inside me like, no, he was a terrible father. And then somebody would remind me like good things that he did and start talking good about him. I go, well, was he a good father? And then I was like, he was both. He was both. And if I can hold both as true, so we're holding these two dichotomies, these two opposing poles as true also are mine. That's a mindset thing. To be able to hold two things as true is a mindset. The non-duality, the being holding them both was healing. Was like, oh, they're both true. He was a terrible father, and he was a great father. And
a great father.
Things are both true, and I can be at peace with that. But I see people doing the opposite also. I can see people only seeing, when their loved ones passed, so they were only good people. Oh, he was like, they're not just seeing the terrible, they're just seeing the good. But you're like, did we have the same? Right. Was this the same? The same person? Are we talking about the same person? So the opposite. Some people might lean towards only seeing the positive, and I don't think that's healthy either. So
no,
not leaning towards one or the other. Yeah. I was on a silent retreat one time, and we were looking over the valley, the view we were in a mountain. There was an amazing view, and we weren't in silence yet, but everybody was like, "Oh, is this so spectacular, so beautiful?" And I was looking at all these fires where people were burning trash, and I was looking at all the trees that had been cut down. I was like, "Oh my God, this is also terrible."
Right. It's also
terrible. It's like people were only choosing to see the good, like they were ignoring everything else that was evident there and choosing only to see the positive. I was like, so in that silent retreat, as I sat with that, it was like, it's both. It's terrible.
Right.
And it's beautiful. There's bad and there's good. There's yin and there's yang. There's one and the other. And it's all,
Right.
And I had a mentor, or when we learn about this, it's as a coach, as a leader, as a person that's going to serve others, if you're not able to hold these as true, both, you're actually more limited in serving others. You're actually more limited in being able to help others. If you're just a positivity coach, or only see the positive coach, or only lean towards one coach, you're doing a disservice.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Because I was gonna say, an average person's day, there's probably as many things that are a source of frustration, or just something that's suboptimal as well as optimal, and then everything in between. I don't care what it is. I mean, there was something super simple yesterday where, I put new tires on my car with my neighbor. They were actually like summer ones. And then I was so excited. I was like, oh, cool, Alex, I got this device last year that will inflate my tires to 32 psi, meaning I don't have to go to the gas station and wait behind people and take the tire gauge, something that's typically a pretty painful exercise. And it was so joyful. I set it to go do one tire. I went inside to go to the restroom, came back out. It was done. I go to do the second tire, and the device broke. And it went all the way from all of a sudden from, hey, I've got this amazing solution in my house where I never need to go to the gas station ever again, to, oh my gosh. Now filling up the tires just went back to this chore, something that's not fun, from something that was awesome. And that was my neighbor was envious of, and I was envious of it. I was like, hey, I never have to go do this again. Went inside, came back out, it broke, and I'm like, you're back where you were. Polarity, something very, very, very small, putting air in your tires. But it's something that in the Midwest we have to do all the time because winter, summer, right? Tire pressure is always fluctuating. And I thought I'd solved something and I hadn't. And I was like, man, I got knocked back down. Weird. Polarity management, joy and sadness, all at the same time.
Ebb and flow. It ebbs and flows.
Ebb and flow.
Ebbing and flowing. Failure and success. I mean, we are in the midst of these dual spaces and things and going back and forth and resisting and preferring one over the other. When you have a preference to certain polarities, that's when you cause or wreak havoc or suffering. Here's I had a client one time suffering the question of, like, seriously kind of pulling his hair, like, do I need to be a go with the flow entrepreneur or taking aggressive action? Should I be taking aggressive action or just be going with the flow? And he was actually, this is a mindset of
all the above.
Exactly. His mindset was, I need to choose one. And I don't know which one to choose. And not knowing which one to choose is causing suffering and so I offered this perspective of polarity management, this framework. And when he saw it, he was like, oh my God, like the suffering immediately ceased. This isn't one or the other. This is about discerning which one's important now. Is it aggressive action or is it going with the flow? And we as entrepreneurs are constantly doing hard work, aggressive action, and then letting go and seeing things just unfold and go on their own. We got to be ebbing and flowing and coming back and forth.
Absolutely. You just described my daily life, man. I mean, even as let's talk about parenthood, right? We know that as parents, we're 1 millisecond away from particularly as like we both have teens or tweens. So a lot of emotions, right? Like Monday mornings at my house are typically kind of emotional with our tween. He goes hard he goes so hard all weekend and playing with his friends and all out, right? And then Mondays, dude has a case of the Mondays. And sometimes it can manifest mentally into something that's physical for him. Like we've literally watched it. And so this morning I woke up and I'm like, man, I don't know what, like when I wake up on Mondays, I'm almost like, what am I going to deal with? Is it going to be a great Monday morning? It'd be just like flawless, which it ended up being. And I was super thankful for it. Or is it going to be emotional where we're like having a lot of tears and we're trying to figure out, how to attack the day and whether or not we actually have a physical condition or whether it's mental and we've manifested it. And that's just life, as or even as our kids were babies. Hey, are they super excited or did they just leave us a big present in their drawers and they're crying, because their diaper's full of poop?
Yeah.
You don't know. And it's got to ebb and flow, man. You got to go with the flow. And sometimes you don't.
Yeah. And then in teaching this mindset, for example, when you have children, you teach them that they have to share their stuff. You got to share, you got to share, you got to share, you got to share. And then that person grows up to always be sacrificing themselves. Doesn't know how to, they're always giving themselves up, always sharing themselves, and they don't know how to take care of themselves. So sharing is a polarity, sharing and not sharing, being a little bit, I don't know if the word would be selfish. So when you map out a polarity, there's a polarity map. And what this map does is show you that every polarity has a positive and a negative. So there's a positive to inhaling, you get oxygen. And there's a positive to exhaling, you release carbon dioxide. If you only inhale and you can't exhale, the carbon dioxide is going to build and it's going to poison you. If you exhale and you don't inhale, you're not going to get any oxygen and your cells are going to die. So the extreme here is when you map out a polarity is, what do you want to achieve? What's the goal of balancing this polarity? The goal of balancing inhaling and exhaling is living. And then you actually want to see what you want to avoid. What do I want to avoid by losing the balance? You want to avoid dying. Mm-hmm. So you see the negative and the positive.
Right.
And so if you get something like sharing or keeping things to yourself, like, not being selfish, because selfish should be the negative connotation of not sharing. It's like, if I'm not sharing, I'm being selfish. Let's see that.
Right.
But so it can't be the negative. It can't be sharing and selfish. It's sharing and, I don't know what the opposite would be. That's not a negative thing. But like serving myself, giving to myself, giving to others, giving to myself, whatever.
Yeah.
So what happens with somebody that's always told you got to share, I used an example one time. My kid was playing PlayStation and his cousin came over and his mom's like, hey, let your cousin play. And I stepped in and said, yo, wait up. What is he doing right now? He's like, Dad, I'm in a freaking competition here. Like, it's not the time. Yeah. I'm in this. And I'm like, well, then he's not in a shield right now. Let him finish doing his thing. And then when he has a chance, some parents might go like, you got to share, stop playing, like forcefully stop the kid from playing and get to the other one so that he can be seen as you got to be a good kid, whatever. Dude, that thing will grow to be a monster in your adulthood. If you can't take care of yourself, say no, balance the yes and the no, the sharing, not sharing, the giving, not giving. Like, there's a lot of people that just give because that's the way they were told that giving makes you a good person, and it wreaks havoc.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I could see that. No, it absolutely does. Yeah. I could see that too. It's pretty weird to think about that stuff. It's like, man, I'm glad I'm past the period in life where we've done a lot of that type of guiding and parenting with our kids. I think we did a good job. But now you got me like,
what you thinking?
Can I get a redo on some of these things?
Yeah, and this applies, Jocko Willink applies this to leadership. Do you have to push people? Do you have to pull people? Do you have to motivate people? Do you have to, how much owner? He even goes to say that. He goes to criticize his first book. Why? Because it's called Extreme Ownership. So when he writes the dichotomy of leadership, he actually criticizes his extreme ownership perspective. Why? Because it's a dichotomy. And to say extreme ownership, you're actually inviting people to extremely take ownership. You're actually inviting them to extremely lean into one polarity. And that's not the So I saw a video where he actually starts talking back, okay, yeah, maybe it wasn't so extreme. Sometimes ownership.
Hey, just kidding. Don't read that first book.
Sometimes ownership, sometimes not ownership. But this applies to delegating, not delegating, centralization. Do we talk about service? This applies in business. When I learned it mostly in business, but it applies to our emotions, to our mental health, to our families, to our relationships. There's dichotomies and polarities in everything we do, and we need to learn to manage them. We need to learn to maintain the balance of the polarities that we're navigating.
Yep. And what I think is kind of cool, and one of the things that I feel like I wish I had as a tool in my tool belt earlier is understanding a couple things. Number one is that these things can and should coexist on a daily basis, and that number two, you're going to flow in between states, depending on, like, using the most simple example with your wife being in New York. So therefore your kids have been poured into a ton. They're probably sick of dad, right? Your wife misses you, you just, and you're in the middle, and you're like, all right, now I'm going to allocate more time, attention, all those things to my wife versus my kids. Because guess what?
Yeah.
They're done with me for a few days.
And
That's pretty cool.
well, this is where the concept of wife miles, where I apply, comically, I say, here, jokingly, I say wife miles. My wife is in New York right now with her friend doing her thing. She went to Vegas for a bachelor party. Those are wife miles. That's like
Absolutely.
she gets to do what she wants, and then I get to focus. I get to do something that I want, and I usually take surf trips. Like I'll go surfing by myself for 3 days, and we keep the balance. But I also apply this to the concept of guiltless surf trips. How do I achieve guiltless surf trips? Managing the polarities in my life well. That means that I've served my kids, I served my wife, I've served my job, I have things in balance to the point where if I go take a surf trip, it doesn't wreak havoc. Nobody's because I haven't been serving, because I haven't been taking care of things.
Right.
So
no, that makes sense.
So I think this is at core of life balance, also work-life balance, relationships. It's to me, it's fascinating that it applies to so many. Being, for example, should I show up as being self-confident or humble? And what are the negatives? The negatives are arrogant and cocky, or too humble would be what, like lacking of self-confidence, not believing in yourself.
Yeah.
Those are the negatives. So how do I show up as self-confident but also humble? This applies everywhere. So when a client comes to me, we sometimes see that they might be overextending or preferring a polarity over another one. Why would they do that? It's because we fear the negative of the other side. So if I'm overly giving, I fear being called selfish. Or if I'm overly humble, I probably fear being called cocky and arrogant. It's my shadow. This connects to, it's your shadow. The negative of the other side is your shadows. Something you don't want to be seen as, something you don't want to be, called. So you're fearing that. For workaholics, it's being lazy. If you don't want to be seen as unproductive or lazy. So you always have to have your time filled. If I have free time, I think I'm wasting it. I'm being unproductive. I'm being lazy. And that is like a cross, to Dracula. It's like, no, you can't call me that. That's something So we usually have learned to lean towards one polarity over the other one. And we have the fear of living in the space of the negative part of the other one. Like, I want to avoid being called that or being seen as that. And that's why I stick over here.
Right.
But I'm starting to reap the negative parts of this one. So usually it'll be like, it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. Like, you're not going to trust me. If somebody leans to not being lazy, like is overly productive and excellent, like perfectionists. These are all, perfectionism, workaholics, being productive. I believe that you don't have to fear the other side of the polarity that much, because it's going to be really hard for you to lean extensively on that side. Like,
right.
Like, don't worry about that. You're overly arrogant. Don't worry about being too humble. Find the balance and consciously go to that side and work on that. So I believe it's a very powerful sense-making framework.
So do you feel like, and this is a big debate, I don't know about in Latin America, but it's definitely a big debate in the United States. This whole concept of balance, which I've always said, it's Now I believe more than anything that it's not really an ideal state or an optimal state. It's more of this blend, which is what I've always kind of said. It's like, hey, you're gonna have to kind of go in and out of things, which is really what we're talking about. It's not either or. If you're perfectly balanced, I don't think that's really a thing.
No,
Maybe it is for some people, but
I think at some point you're going to push on one side and you're going to lose balance, but you're going to have to come back to the other side at one point or another. So it doesn't matter if that's in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or however long you want to go. If you don't find that balance, you're probably going to be destroying everything on the path.
right.
And this might be somebody that's only focused on work their whole life, never valued balance, and gone through multiple marriages or whatever. I do agree that to achieve extremely high endeavors, like in sports, you have to lose that balance. I mean,
Yeah.
I have I follow surfing. In sports, I follow surfing most of all. And there was this competitor, Mick Fanning. He's from Australia. He had never won a world title, and he choicefully made the choice to sacrifice balance with family and friends, and so that he could potentially reach that goal. And he then became a 3-time world champion. But he saw the sacrifice to the point where after 3 times, he's like, I'm not willing to do that again. Like, I'm done.
Right.
Because I did lose that balance consciously, intentionally. I knew it was going to happen. Now I can't keep on doing that. Like, I've got my 3 world titles. I'm good.
Right.
So you hear a lot of people saying you lose balance for a certain amount of time until you reach the accolades, and then you're going to have to come back or die.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I even felt that, like, one of my bigger accomplishments for myself, was doing a half Ironman, and my son was, I don't know, it's like 12 years ago. But that required intense training for me. Like, I had a 6-month training schedule, and that training schedule required me to spend a lot of time on a bike, on running and or swimming. And there were many times I wanted to quit because I was a new dad. I still remember my wife giving me like this little thing that made me not quit, this little trophy. It was really cool. But as soon as that was done, I went, like, I hung up a lot of things. I sold my triathlon bike. I actually never did a triathlon again. I went way back to investing in my family.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I had spent so much time on the bike or in the pool or running during that training period that I just kind of went back the other way, right? And so even in things like amateur sports, recreational sports, I mean, your daily life, you're going to run into these. Chances are, as a listener of this podcast, you made a decision not to listen to something else, to listen to this today. It's just a little bit of an example of where we are forced with these choices. Each choice requires us to have something else that is going to take its place.
Whenever you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another. You cannot say yes without saying no. It's a coin. They come together.
Absolutely.
So you're actually, whenever you're saying yes, you're saying no. And whenever you're saying no, you're actually saying yes. So, for example,
absolutely,
I say yes to climbing volcanoes. And I set a goal to climb all the volcanoes in Nicaragua. And I told my wife, I got to keep on going. So I'm going to say no to spending time with the family on these days, consciously, intentionally. But once I'm done, I'm like, we'll go back. We'll go the other way. But if you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So, yeah.
I feel like that's an amazing way to end this episode.
All right. Yes.
If we're saying
yes to one thing, and we're saying no, keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's an amazing end point because it is true. I mean, there's, if I were to summarize this, really, we've got 2 key things. Number one, every yes is a no to something else. But then furthermore is the fact that we're always going to have to be managing the yin, the yang, the fire, the water, the pros and cons. I mean, it's always going to be, and they're not always like positives and negatives of each other. It's just like we're always going to be left with choices. And those choices sometimes require us to invest in an area of our life for a period of time. And we've got to, if we're not tending to other parts of our life, like go back and tend to those and try not to, for me, the key is try not to have the seesaw going too quick, too crazy, right? It's like, just try to keep it at a nice, manageable pace, flowing back and forth between the needs and the demands of my time.
Make it beautiful.
I don't know. Yeah, man, make it a symphony.
Make it beautiful.
Right?
Make it an ebb and a flow of going and coming, and like fighting and not fighting.
My beautiful disaster. My beautiful disaster. Well, my catastrophe. Right?
We had that one person in the VUCA Fit Dojo say, I've been a warrior in a battle, and now I just want to be. I don't want to be a warrior anymore. I want to be a gardener. I want to be a.
That's right.
I'm done. It's time to garden. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Heck yeah, man. Yeah. There you go. All right. Let's wrap it up. As a reminder, we've got some free resources for our listeners at VUCAfit.com. A couple of guides that you can download for free, kind of help you get your arms around this. A reading list of our 17 very impactful books we share with people that we care about. We care deeply about you. If you like what we're doing, we'd love it if you smash the subscribe button. Furthermore, we would deeply, deeply appreciate it if you left a review. And to honor my my statement is that we're going to be reading reviews as they come online. And so this one is going to be appreciation for listener. It's 20-year-old students. As a matter of fact, he put his name so we get to read it out loud. Mr. Brad Akers left a I could read the full title here, but that's all right. It says, if you really listen, and then it cut off. Being a student of Jose and getting to know Kevin has been so amazing for me. If you listen to what they say, you'll begin recognizing the flaws with how we often look at things, and it makes room to build a bigger and more fulfilled life. You're right. We just talked about how we look at things today, didn't we? So, Mr. Akers, we appreciate you. And if you'd like your review read online, guess what? You got to put it there. Otherwise, we can't help you. Have a phenomenal week and be well.